Good afternoon, all. Welcome to our Samvad talk on multitask learning architectures for end to end automatic speech recognition by Professor Ram Subramaniam and Shrikant Nadiga. I'm Shivangi Garg with the Branding Committee, and I'll be introducing the speakers for the day. Shrikant Nadiga is currently working as a speech recognition engineer too with Dialpad Inc. and is a part-time MS research student at IIIT Bangalore under the supervision of Professor Sachit Rao and Professor V. Subramanian. He was an EHRC and Minro scholar while being a full-time MS student. His MS thesis is on the topic of multitask learning for end-to-end ASR systems with attention and bringing in external knowledge to these data-driven architecture. He has co-authored three papers, and one of his research papers is on MS thesis topic, which won the Best Student Paper Award, honorable mention at SPCom 2020. Before joining IIIT Bangalore, he was an SVT engineer with Sonos Networks. He received a BE degree in telecommunication engineering from VTU. His current research interests are in multitask learning, end-to-end ASR systems for convention and telephony, speech, and ASR on the edge for low power devices. P. Ramasubramanian is currently professor at IIIT Bangalore since 2017. Prior to this, he held various positions in academia and industry, notably at TIFR, he research scholar, fellow, and reader, University Valencia, Spain, ATR Labs, Kyoto, Japan, IISc, Siemens Corporate Research, Senior Member Technical Staff, and Head of Speech Research at Bangalore, and PSU Professor. He has a PhD from TIFR Mumbai. His current research interests are in automatic speech recognition, machine learning, deep learning, and associative memory formulation. Today, the speakers will talk about automatic speech recognition, ASR, which is the task of transcribing a speech signal using machines. Although the ASR problem has been studied for decades, the adoption of ASR systems has seen a significant increase in the past decade, fueled by the research in deep neural networks and in an increase in computational power. In this context, Professor Ram Subramaniam and Shrikant Nadiga will present a few studies on multitask learning with end-to-end ASR architecture. Specifically, their work on a multi-target ASR system that can predict multiple target sequences, phone level and grapheme level, using a single model. The speakers will present uh, how such architecture can help in solving different ASR problems. Their study on the nature of neural attention in ASR systems and the drawbacks of how attention has been thought of with these architectures. They will briefly present studies on multilingual ASR systems and some open problems in the area of multitask learning with interest to end ASR. We warm heartedly welcome you, sirs.
Thank you, Shivangi, for the very nice introduction. Let me take this opportunity to kind of walk you through what this talk holds, and more importantly, to give a nice introduction to Shrikanta. This talk given by Shrikanta largely will be focused on end-to-end ASR, that is automatic speech recognition. As we know that ASR has been almost a 5-decade-long problem and recently getting solved over the last decade thanks to deep learning architectures and a lot of work being done by the giants, Google, Amazon, and Apple, and Microsoft. And they have heralded a new era of deep learning, which has held on. And that's how you see products like Google Home and Alexa and Siri and so on, Cortana, which are all successful and which are kind of down-to-earth in-home systems, which everybody has access to. And these systems have largely been dominated by what are called end-to-end architectures, which are a carryover from a lot of work done in machine translation, as well as some of the work done in image object recognition and video indexing kind of problems. Specifically, in Srikanta's talk, he'll be looking at end-to-end ASR architectures from the point of view of attention mechanisms. And we defined this topic for his MS thesis long back when he started the work to be definitely on end-to-end architectures, and specifically to look at how to incorporate knowledge, that is knowledge coming from speech, into very hungry, data-driven systems, how to leverage such speech knowledge into the architectures. So he has kept to it, and he has very successfully adopted such transformations and got very important seminal contributions of 2-3 types, which we'll be talking about today. And notably, I would say one of the work got the Best Paper Award, Best Student Paper Award in international conference, SPCOM 2020. And secondly, I would like to mention that Srikanta is probably a handful of end-to-end ASR architects in the country, and probably among 2 dozen, 3 dozen people who know that such stuff across the world. And to the extent that he has been acknowledged by the end-to-end platform maker from Johns Hopkins University, Shinchin Watanabe, who created the ESP.NET platform, he has been acknowledged, Srikanta has been acknowledged to have contributed recipes to the ESP.NET architectures, which is one of the foremost leading architectures of the end-to-end systems. And so with this, I invite Srikanta to go ahead with his presentation. And thank you. Srikanta, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming to this Samvad talk. Today I'll be talking about the about multitask learning architectures for end-to-end automatic speech recognition. This is the outline of my talk today. So I'll briefly give some introduction to end-to-end ASR and to the ASR problem itself, and then briefly introduce the end-to-end ASR architectures. Specifically, I'll talk something about the CTC, or the connectionist temporal classification, and the attention mechanisms. And then I'll also introduce the multitask learning paradigm within the end-to-end ASR architectures. And then we'll see a couple of studies that we have done in the speech lab, specifically multitask learning with multiple targets and multitask learning with alignment as a task. And then we'll also look at a few other multitask learning architectures that we have also pursued within the lab, and then some challenges and some open challenges specifically for multitask learning and conclusion. So these are the publications from the works that we have done. This talk will mostly be about the first 2 papers. The first paper is the jointly learning to align and transcribe using attention-based alignment and uncertainty to veil losses. This is the paper for which we received the SPCOM 2020 Best Student Paper Award, honorable mention. So coming to the definition of end-to-end architectures, right? So end-to-end is a term that has been used in both in academia and industry in the past couple of years. So I think the best example, if you want to take for traditional versus end-to-end architectures, would be let's say if we take an example of autonomous vehicles, right? So what we can see is in the traditional way of solving an autonomous driving system, you would see that there are multiple sensor inputs. For example, there could be multiple camera views, radar, LiDAR, sonar, GPS, and IMU. All these data would be fed using those sensors. And then there would be a perception component and a planning component, right? And then this cascaded system would all go to the control component of this architecture, and the control component would decide how much should we turn the steering wheel, whether we should apply the brakes, or what should be the speed of the vehicle, and as such. So this is how many of the companies solve the autonomous driving or self-driving system. Like if you take the example of Tesla self-driving cars, you would see you would see that they have this multi-headed architecture what they call as the HydraNet, which is looking at different camera views and different inputs from the car sensors. And then they have a policy driving, the driving policy would decide uh, the steering angle and the brake. On the other end, on the other end of the spectrum, there are companies like Comma.ai, which are like pursuing completely end-to-end self-driving solution, which is like basically looking at only the camera input and maybe the radar input from the car, and then there is a single neural network that is sitting in between, which basically directly decides the steering angle, right? So there is no as a driving policy, you would say, to control these behaviors. Like this is I would say the extreme, one of the extreme examples of uh, end-to-end machine learning. So we will see how like what is the analogy for this for end-to-end automatic speech recognition, and then we'll specifically look at the multitask learning within that. So the problem of automatic speech recognition, like historically, has been like looked at in this context of the noisy channel model. Even other machine learning problems, like let's say spelling correction or machine translation, you could think of in a similar fashion, where there is a source sentence which the speaker has was intended to speak, and this sentence travels through some kind of noisy channel, right? So at the end of this channel, this sentence is a noisy sentence, and then we have a speech recognition decoder, ASR decoder, and the task of the decoder is to uh, guess to the best of its ability what the source wanted to speak, right? So the way this has been historically solved is you all the sentences that are possible within that language. Let's say if the source wanted to say if music be the food of love, right, and there could be all possible sentences at the target, right, and then we would pass this through the decoder and then get this noisy output, and we would compare this with the noisy sentence that we have from the noisy channel, right? And then we would basically pick that one sentence which best approximates this. So within this noisy channel model, what we would do is uh, we are concerned with what is the most likely sentence out of all sentences in that language. So if we are building this for English, we are concerned with all the sentences within that language given some acoustic input O. And this acoustic input O is our speech signal or some kind of feature vectors, let's say spectrogram or Mel frequency, capsule coefficients, MFCC feature vectors. And we would treat these acoustic inputs as a sequence of feature vectors, O1 to OT. And then we define the sentence as a sequence of words, right? So our complete sentence is nothing but a sequence of individual words. So in the traditional ASR, automatic speech recognition architecture, this problem was basically solved with individual components, and these components are there is an acoustic model, which is a Gaussian mixture model, and then there is a language model as well, and then there is a pronunciation model. So the acoustic model takes as inputs the feature vectors. So we don't feed the time domain signal directly to the model. We do some feature extraction at short time intervals. So these are short term Fourier features. So we take these 10 or 20 millisecond features and then feed it to the acoustic model, and the pronunciation model gives the pronunciation of each of the words, right? So the pronunciations are in terms of alphabets. So these are the phones of a language, and how this define how we pronounce those words um, for that. And the language model itself gives the probability of the words within that language, or probability of the sentence. So if we want to compare similarly to the self-driving cars on the ASR side, the traditional versus end-to-end architecture, right? So if we are looking for the sentence, welcome to Samvad Talk, uh, for the traditional ASR architecture, there will be an acoustic model which takes as input the time domain or the speed signal. We convert this to feature vectors and then feed it to the acoustic model. This is the acoustic model of the traditional ASR architecture. And the lexicon would basically give the pronunciation of each of these words within this sentence. Say, for example, if we are looking for samvad, there will be multiple pronunciations depending on let's say, the locale of the speaker. They would be pronouncing these words differently. And the language model will basically give the probability of, let's say, bigrams or trigrams within this language. So, for example, to samvad will have higher probability than these other words, right? So we would solve the tradition. We would solve the problem of automatic speech recognition in the traditional architecture this way by breaking down this into acoustic model, a pronunciation model, and a language model. Whereas on the end-to-end ASR architecture, what we ideally want to achieve is there should be a single end-to-end neural network, which basically takes the acoustic input, acoustics as the input, and directly predicts words or sequence of words as the output. This is what we want to achieve in end-to-end automatic speech recognition. So there are many motivations for moving from a traditional ASR architecture to an end-to-end ASR architecture. I'm just listing them, listing few of them here. So let's say one of the points that people usually talk about is this stepwise refinement. In the traditional end-to-end ASR architecture, there were many module-specific processes that were required to build an accurate ASR model. So one of them would be to go from a Gaussian mixture model, GMM-HMM model, to a deep neural network, DNN-HMM model. There would be many steps involved here. And then this was a stepwise refinement. First, we would build the GMM-HMM model, and then build the DNN-HMM model. And whatever errors were there in the GMM model would kind of cascade, or like there would be a snowballing effect to the DNN model. And the other problem is the requirement of linguistic information to build these traditional ASR models. So to factorize the acoustic model and the language model, we need a handcrafted pronunciation dictionary, right? So this is basically the mapping from words to phones. So this is again subject to human error because we ideally build this handcrafted. That's one problem that is there in the traditional ASR architecture. And there are some languages which do not explicitly have a word boundary at all. So we don't know where one word ends and the other word begins. And for these kind of languages, we would need a separate tokenization module to model these. And also the traditional ASR architectures makes this conditional independence assumptions. We would come to like why, how end-to-end solves this and how it could be advantageous not making this assumption in the next slides. And also the traditional ASR architecture are like in practice when we implement them, they are implemented in what is called complex decoding graphs or the HCLG graph, where H is the acoustic model, C is the context, L is the lexicon, the pronunciation model, and G is the grammar. Right? The grammar is our language model. So, and we would decode and we would train and decode an utterance by integrating all these modules together, but they are handled efficiently using FSTs. But in practice, like construction and implementation of these are like very complicated, and that's one of the motivations that I would say that's also one of the motivations for moving from a traditional model to an end-to-end model. So people also talk about this incoherence in optimization because these acoustic models and pronunciation models and the language models are built kind of separately and they have their own objective functions. And it doesn't mean that even though we optimize these separately, when we put them together, will we achieve the best possible optimum? That's not always guaranteed. And historically, each part of these systems have their own set of challenges, like what kind of feature representations we want to use. Coming to like one of the main attractions for moving to end-to-end ASR architectures is most of the time speech transcription is not always like the only thing that industry or some product is trying to solve. They always have, let's say, a natural language understanding or intent classification or some other task downstream which they are like very much interested in. One advantage of using an end-to-end architecture is we can plug these systems together and then train this overall architecture using a single loss function. And then this overall system would be optimized end to end for that target task. And there could be other tasks like speech synthesis, speech translation, going from one source speech to a target different language text, speech enhancement. So if we want to enhance the speech in some kind of noisy environments. So one advantage is we can club them together in the end-to-end architectures and then optimize them together. So let's say we move to the end-to-end ASR paradigm. We will see some of the issues very apparent as soon as we start implementing or thinking about the end-to-end ASR paradigm. So one main issue is the length of the inputs is not equal to the length of the outputs. Right? So if we take a 3-second sample of audio, it could have 300 feature vectors. If we extract, let's say, 10 millisecond windows, whereas it will not have 300 letters as the transcript. Right? For a signal of 3 seconds, the maximum, let's say, the amount of letters in the output transcript would be 30 or 40. So we would see that the length of the inputs is not equal to the length of the outputs. So we can't use, let's say, mean square error or cross entropy or different loss functions, which assume a one-to-one correspondence with the inputs and the outputs. So we can't use these kind of loss functions to train the end-to-end ASR model. So there is a need, so we need a way of finding alignment between the network outputs and the label. So the network gives an output at 10 millisecond intervals, but the output is 30 or 40, much less than the input. So historically, there have been two main architectures to solve this problem of end-to-end ASR. One of them is the connectionist temporal classification introduced by Graves and others, Alex Graves. And then the other is the attention or the seek-to-seek model, sequence-to-sequence model. This was kind of jointly, independently at the same time introduced by Chan and Badanu. So I will briefly talk about these two and then move to the multitask learning paradigm. So in the CTC or the connectionist temporal classification, as we said, the length of the inputs are not equal to the length of the outputs, right? So typically these CTC models are trained with a recurrent neural network as the encoder. So we would feed the input feature vectors, let's say spectrogram or MLCC feature vectors, to a recurrent neural network, and the recurrent neural network encodes this over as a distribution over symbols. So the output of the recurrent neural network will have the same number of nodes as our vocabulary. So if we are training this model for recognizing letters, it could be A to Z. If we are training this for phoneme recognition, it could be a set of the phonemes for phones for that language. So we assume that there is a distribution over symbols at the last layer or the output of the recurrent neural network. So what CTC does is it defines a mapping function beta, which goes from the RNN outputs to our target, which is our sentence, right? And what we ideally want to do is we want to maximize the probability or the likelihood of recognizing this correct sequence under this model. So CTC CTC also assumes conditional independence in the sense that every output is independent of each other. So the overall probability of the output sequence is nothing but the product of the individual probabilities that the RNN output gives. So let's say if we are looking for the example of hello, so yeah, if I feed a 3-second signal to the model, H could be repeated many times in time step. Similarly, E and L. So if I want to compute the probability of this sentence under the CTC model, we would just take the product of individual probabilities of getting these in the last posterior vector. And this is what we are trying to optimize. We want to find the best possible model under this. So as I said, there is a recurrent neural network setting in the CTC model, which takes as input the input feature vectors. Length of the input is not always equal to the length of the output. So this is the problem that we are trying to solve. And what CTC does is it also defines these blank symbols, right? Blank is basically when the network says, I don't want to make any prediction at this point of time. So as you can see, there are many input feature vectors, but we don't have as many output tokens in the output sequence. So by using the blank, we can blank the CTC solves this problem, and then it finds the alignment between the input and the output sequence. So if when we are training this CTC network using a recurrent neural network, CTC loss function, this is what it will look like. So for example, for the example of hello, there will be multiple ways hello can be the word hello can be segmented into so many time steps. So let's say one of them is H is repeated 3 times in the initial 3 MFCC feature vectors, and then there is a blank, and then there is the E letter, and then again there are 2 blanks. So you can see that there are many distributions of these kind of segmentations, and these are called paths in the CTC network. So what we would do is we basically maximize the probability of recognizing the correct sequence, but we don't care about the alignment of these. So we basically compute these probabilities, and these probabilities are the product of each of the individual letters, and the overall CTC likelihood is the summation, because we are so the overall is the summation of each of these possible segmentations of hello. So I'm just plotting the CTC posteriors from a already trained RNN CTC network. So if we train the recurrent neural network using a CTC cost function on a speech data set, and then we are plotting the posteriors or the last softmax output of this, and the ground truth utterance is bricks are an alternative, which is what I'm plotting in the title here. Sorry. So this is the ground truth, and then I'm also plotting. I'm also like outputting the phone level or the phoneme level transcription for this. And in this figure, the y-axis is the vocabulary. So we have around 42 phones for this data set. This is the timid data set that we are using. And the x-axis is nothing but our input time step. So these many number of frames we are feeding to the network. And if you look at the high values, wherever the network gives high values, so for example, for the initial, the phone B, you would see this has a very high output in the softmax posterior. And similarly for R and IH, R and E, right? So these posteriors are defined for the output tokens. So what I mean is these posteriors can be repeated many times in time. So B is repeated 1 time, and R is repeated twice in time step. So we need a way to collapse this and then give us the sentence back. And CTC uses a collapsing function. So I'm just putting the greedy or the argmax of the output here, but in practice we use the Viterbi forward backward algorithm to find the best path within this posterior matrix, and then we would use the collapsing function to collapse the repeated outputs into a single output to get the final sentence output. So this is how CTC used to solve the sequence-to-sequence or the ASR problem. Then there was this introduction of what we call neural attention. This is another way of solving the ASR problem in the end-to-end domain. So I'm just giving an example for one of the computer vision tasks here, which is the image segmentation task. So if I so in this paper, what they did is they used an attention. They used this concept of neural attention to solve this. So I'm just introducing the idea of neural attention here. So for example, for this first image, if the caption says a woman is throwing a frisbee in a park, so the idea of neural attention is if we ask the model for predicting the word frisbee, where did the model give the most attention to within the input image? It should basically point to the frisbee that is there in the image. And if we ask the same question for different words, say for example for the word woman, then it should highlight the woman in the picture. So that is what neural attention is trying to solve. If we take this and then apply it to the problem of ASR, how do we solve that? That's what I'm going to talk about now. So to formally define neural attention, what we define it as. So each time the model needs to generate an output symbol it kind of soft searches for a set of positions in the input feature vector sequence where the most relevant information is concentrated. So I want to highlight that so the model should be able to search for a set of positions, and these set of positions should be the most relevant information for predicting that output. So for example, again, if we go back to the example of image captioning, the most relevant set of input feature vectors for the word frisbee is this. So the model should be able to soft search, right? So it's not like it's selecting one or two pixels out of the whole image. It's a soft search. So it's going to give a weightage over the entire input image, but different parts of the image will have different weights depending on how relevant they are for making a prediction. So this attention function is also defined as mapping a query and a set of key value pairs. I'll come to what these are in the next slides, but I just want to mention that the queries, keys, and values are all vectors, and the overall the final output is computed as a weighted summation of values, where weight is assigned to each value using a similarity function, and that similarity function is what people usually call the attention function or different attention functions. And I'll introduce one of them in the next slide. So I'm just plotting what attention will look like for the case of automatic speech recognition. So this last figure, the last one here, is the spectrogram of an utterance. And the next from the last is the MFCC, or the mel frequency capsule coefficients for that utterance. And then what I'm plotting in the first row of this figure is the attention weight for predicting some phones in that sentence. So for example, if we take the same sentence, bricks are an alternative, for predicting the first phone, the bar phone, where is the model giving the most attention to in the input feature vector sequence. So what you can see is, you can see a distribution of these attention weights, where it gives the most importance to the initial part of the utterance, right? So the later parts are basically 0. So we don't consider the later parts. Similarly, for the next phone, the R phone, we would the model should be able to shift from left to right. So initially, the bar phone was concentrated in the first part of the utterance. So that's where the model attended to. For the next phone, the R phone, because speech is monotone, going from left to right, the model should be able to shift its attention from the initial part to a slightly later part, and this should be the part where the most relevant information is concentrated for predicting the phone R. So we can see similarly for predicting the other phones in the same utterance, the model should be able to shift from left to right, and we will formally define how the model is able to do this task of neural attention. But I just wanted to visualize what we are looking for when we say neural attention in the case of automatic speech recognition. So this neural attention for ASR is solved using this architecture called attention-based encoder decoder model, where there is an encoder. The encoder is a LSTM or some recurrent neural network based architecture, and the decoder is also another recurrent neural network based architecture. And attention is defined between these two models. So if x1 to x3 is our input feature vector sequence, y is our output, the encoder takes these input feature vectors and then transforms these into some sequence of hidden representations. So our overall, what we are interested is in computing this probability of the output symbol I, given all the previous output symbols. So we have predicted y1 to I minus 1 so far, and then we also ask for this context vector. So this is how the neural attention is implemented using an encoder decoder model. So the context vector basically says what is the context, what is the summary of the acoustics or the input feature vectors given some context. So this context is given by the decoder, and this is what we usually mean by a query. So the query is coming from from the decoder side. So the decoder basically asks, so I have predicted these letters or these subwords or these words so far in time, right? And that's what the decoder is doing. And the decoder asks, given that I have predicted these many things in the past, where should I look in the input to predict the next word? That's what the decoder query says. And then basically it goes to the attention mechanism, and attention gives these weights or these alpha weights, and the alphas give an importance for each of the input feature vectors or input representations. And we compute this context vector. The context vector is nothing but a weighted summation of the input feature representations. And then we compute these attention weights or the alphas using an attention function between the decoder side and the encoder side. So this is how we solve the problem of neural attention using an encoder decoder architecture. So from there, I'll just take an example of one of the simplest functions of attention, which is the dot product attention, right? So as the name suggests, we just take the dot product between the input or the encoder hidden vector and the decoder hidden vector, right? Which is the decoder is coming from here, which is the query that the decoder has, and the query is basically asking where should the decoder give the most attention to predict the next output symbol. And then we have a set of key value pairs. So these are the keys. These are what are defined as the keys. And then these are defined as the values. So this attention function is basically defined as the dot product between the queries and the keys. So as we can guess, this dot product will be the maximum value when these vectors are closer in that vector space. The decoder basically is giving a representation and then computing the dot product with all the hidden representations for all the input features. And then we would compute the alpha as a softmax output of these representations. And then we would weigh these values using the attention weights and then compute the context vector. And the context vector is again used to make a prediction for the next token. And this is one example of an attention mechanism. There are many different attention mechanisms that are defined in literature, and people use different attention mechanisms. This is one of the simplest ones that we can implement. So coming to just summarizing what neural attention does in the case of the automatic speech recognition problem. So the neural attention basically solves for where should the model give the most attention to in the input feature vector sequence to make some prediction. So coming to the task or the problem of multitask learning in end-to-end ASR architectures, right? So as we took an example of self-driving cars, in that example for the autonomous driving vehicles, the multitask learning could look something like image segmentation or object detection, like which are the objects that are there in the image, or depth estimation. So these are some of the different tasks that they have in the case of autonomous driving. Whereas in the case of ASR, as we saw so far, there is a connectionist temporal classification. There is a CTC task, and then there is an attention task. So recently there was this joint CTC attention architecture that was defined for multitask learning, which basically has a shared encoder. So the encoder part of the architecture is shared between both the CTC network and also the attention network. So we would train this using a multitask learning loss function, which is a convex combination of the CTC loss function and the attention loss function. So we take these lambdas. The lambdas are the learning or the multitask learning weights. How much weightage are we giving to learning the CTC task, and how much weightage are we giving to learning the attention or attention task. So again, in this architecture, the encoder and decoder are some kind of recurrent neural networks, and the attention is defined between these encoder and the decoder hidden representations, similarly to what we saw in the case of neural attention. So most of our work builds on top of this joint CTC and attention architecture. So both the papers that we submitted and we published are based on the joint CTC attention architecture. So this is during training. So during the training, we can combine CTC and attention using this multitask learning way. So the authors also introduced in a separate paper, the joint decoder, which also looks at the CTC part of the network and the attention and combines these two scores together to also make prediction during decoding. So we are using that also in our implementations. So we saw multitask learning using a joint CTC and attention architecture. So right now I will also introduce this concept of multitask learning with multiple targets in the end-to-end ASR architecture. So the publication is this, the multi-target hybrid CTC attentional decoder for joint phoneme grapheme recognition. So yeah, so the multiple targets within this model that we are interested in is the phonemes and the graphemes for that utterance. So what I mean is, given some input acoustic representation, the features, there could be multiple targets that we might be interested in predicting, right? So one of the tasks, let's say for doing keyword spotting or different tasks, we might be interested in getting the phones of that utterance. But for doing ASR, automatic speech recognition, what we want is we want the words or letters of that utterance. So this is what we are trying to solve in this work. So in traditional ASR systems, words are predicted using either phonemes or graphemes as subword units. Similarly, in end-to-end ASR architectures, there are different types of subword sequences, but they are in isolation, right? So we would either predict phone sequences from the end-to-end model, or we would predict, let's say, letter sequence from the end-to-end model. But when we did this work, there was not enough exploration into kind of training these together in the same model, and then studies on how it would affect the learning capacity, or is the model even able to learn both phones and graphemes from the same model? So there were some work done before us, specifically these two papers where they looked at graphemes as subword units, and they show that using graphemes is better than using phonemes as a subword unit for end-to-end speech recognition. But in our work, what we do is we explore this joint phoneme grapheme decoding using an encoder decoder with the hybrid CTC and attention mechanism. So this entire architecture is again built on the joint CTC attention mechanism that we just saw. Again, here the encoder is shared between two additional decoders. So instead of having just one decoder which is predicting grapheme level targets, we have two decoders which is sharing the representations learned from one shared encoder. And these decoders learn to predict both phonemes and graphemes from unique encoder representation. And this encoder, shared encoder and multi-decoder network is trained in the multitask learning setting. And we want to minimize the prediction error for both phonemes and graphemes for that data set. And we also study by implementing this phoneme decoder at some intermediate layers within this end-to-end ASR architecture, and then I'll show some performance benefits of doing such a study. So one motivation, as I said, for doing this multi-target model is, let's say if somebody wants to do keyword spotting, ideally we want the network to predict phones of that language, because we want to handle multiple pronunciation variants of keywords. So for example, if somebody is using an Amazon device or Google device, they will have their own wake words, right? So in the way some people pronounce these wake words will be different depending on how they pronounce. Depending on their, let's say, the mother tongue, or different L1 or their mother tongue. Ideally, we want these models to be able to predict phones of that language. But let's say some company doesn't want to ship two models, right? One for doing keyword spotting, and again another model to do ASR. One advantage of having a single model which is able to predict both phones and graphemes is at the inference time when we want to actually deploy these models, right? They will have some kind of strict compute budget, and if we want to uh, adhere to this compute budget, we can't ship more than one model, right? So that's where this multi-target learning would be beneficial. So these are some of the prior works that works on utilizing the phonetic information in end-to-end ASR systems. So I would say the most closest one for our work is this multitask learning with low-level auxiliary task by Shubham Toshniwal and others, and also this joint phoneme grapheme model for end-to-end speech recognition. This is very similar to what we are doing, but this was published very recently. Um, uh, this year. Yeah. So, and this concept of joint phoneme grapheme recognition is not only studied in end-to-end ASR. This has also been studied in the hybrid or in the traditional ASR architectures as well. So we looked at these references uh, for some like comparison of our work. So this is what we are proposing. Like, this is our proposed model. As I said, there is a shared encoder. The encoder is shared between two decoders. One is predicting a phone level. One is doing the phoneme level recognition, and another is at the grapheme level. So, for example, for this word she, this would be SHE for the grapheme level representation. Similarly, for the phone level, this could be SHA E and the other phones that are relevant for any word. So again, this is not necessarily limited to two targets. In the what I mean is this is not limited to a phoneme target and a grapheme target. So this could be generalized to any number of targets, M targets, where we have an output label sequence for each of those targets, and then this is and each of them have a different length. So each of these targets can be of different target lengths. So within this shared encoder and multi-decoder architecture, we have a separate CTC task for each of the targets because we are working on top of the joint CTC and attention architecture. There is a separate CTC task for each of these targets. So one for the phoneme level target, one for the grapheme level target. So we also have an attention task for each of these targets. And this is our overall cost function, which is what we are trying to minimize. So there is a multitask learning rate for each of these different target functions for both CTC and attention. So in our implementation, we just set this to 0.5 for both phonemes and graphemes. But in theory, we can also experiment with different multitask learning rates. Let's say if we want to give more importance to recognizing graphemes than phonemes, then we can increase the lambdas or give more weightage to the grapheme decoder and then reduce the weightage that we give for recognizing phonemes. So those are some experiments that we haven't done, but we show that the model is able to learn both phonemes and graphemes within the same architecture. So we did some architectural studies using this smaller data set called TIMID. Because it's easier to do this kind of architectural studies, we will be able to get the results in a faster manner. And these are the model parameters that we have used. We consider around 12 different attention mechanisms to do this. And then we also consider different decoder networks, an LSTM and a GRU network. We also consider different encoder architectures. So this is what we are trying to study here is if we club both phonemes and graphemes together in the same architecture, would it perform better than training a separate phoneme recognition model and a separate grapheme recognition model? That's what we are trying to study here. And in these figures, the ones you will see now, the dotted lines are the ones where either there is a phoneme decoder or there is a grapheme decoder, but we don't combine them together. These are two separate models. But in the solid lines, they are the ones which have phonemes and graphemes together in the same model. So what I want to point out is in all these results, what we see is at least the performance doesn't degrade when we combine the phonemes and the graphemes. And in many of the cases, we actually get better performance combining both phonemes and graphemes of the same model than modeling them separately. That's what we see. Um, and I'm just plotting an overall attention plot on an entire utterance. So let's say our x-axis is the input time step. These are how many frames we are feeding to the network, and the y-axis is our output time step, or the letters, like how many letters there are. For the phoneme recognition task, these would be the phonemes of that utterance. So as we predict the next phonemes, the model should be able to shift its attention from left to right, and that's what we see. So this plot basically says that the model is able to learn monotonic attention for both phoneme level targets and also grapheme level targets within the same model. So if we zoom into that previous picture, right? Let's say I take a part of the overall sentence and I'm looking for this one word, which is roles, ROLLS. And then I want to ask both the phoneme recognition model and the grapheme model, where are they giving the most attention to predicting these outputs. So here the solid lines are for the grapheme ROLLS, and the dotted lines with the dash lines are for recognizing the phones of roles. So what we want to show is, for example, for predicting these two letters, the double L's, the grapheme recognition model is able to give these attentions, right? But if you look at the phoneme model, the phone model, there is only one la phone for the word roles, and this attention for the phone la is distributed over both the regions, or the regions for both the grapheme CL. So what this shows is, in a way, the phones and the phone model and the grapheme model are kind of working together. Or when we train this, the information or the representations from both of them are working together. So they help each other in getting the accuracy of better. So this is when we implement both the grapheme recognition model and the phoneme recognition model at the last layer of an encoder network. So if we have, let's say, 5-layer recurrent neural network encoder, we implement these grapheme recognition and phoneme recognition model at the last layer. We also study what happens when we bring this phoneme recognition model to some intermediate layers, because in the representation learning theory, what we know is the lower layers of a network learn representations which are closer to the input domain. So phonemes, or the phones of that language, being closer to the acoustics, our hypothesis was, if we bring this phoneme recognition model to some lower layer, would it improve the performance of this multitask network? So we did that study on this larger LibriSpeech dataset. So here, what it shows is, if we implement only the phone model, we get a phoneme error rate of 7%, right? And if we implement only an isolated grapheme recognition model, we get a character error rate of 7.7%. And then this is when we implement phones and graphemes decoder using our proposed shared encoder and multi-decoder model. And this is if we implement both at the 5th layer. So both of them are working at the last layer. So we see that the performance is not as good as an isolated or independent phoneme and grapheme recognition model, but it doesn't degrade much. So the advantage here is, instead of shipping two models, one for doing phone recognition, let's say for keyword spotting task, and one for doing grapheme recognition for the ASR task, where let's say each of these models have 50 million parameters. The overall model parameter would be 100 million when we ship this, when we deploy these models. Whereas in the case of a joint phoneme and grapheme model, because they are in the same architecture, the overall number of parameters from the model comes down significantly, but not much degradation in performance. But this is when we implement this at the 5th layer. So we also see that if we bring this only the phoneme decoder to the 3rd layer, right? The phoneme decoder is at the 3rd layer, but the graphemes are still being predicted from the 5th layer representations. This reduces a bit. So we took this to the extreme, like we implemented the phone decoder at the 1st layer itself, and the grapheme decoder at the 5th layer. So what we see is the performance is actually better than an independent phoneme and grapheme recognition model. So basically what this means is, given the same architecture, if we bring the phoneme recognition model to the first layer, keeping the grapheme recognition model at the fifth layer, we are able to perform better than the baseline. The baseline is two independent architectures recognizing phonemes and graphemes separately. So that's what we learned by doing this joint phoneme grapheme recognition model. Now I'll talk about another multitask learning architecture that we worked on, which is multitask learning with alignment as a task. So this is the publication for which we received the best student paper award in SPCom. So when what we mean by alignment is, let's say we are building an end-to-end ASR model for the task of phoneme recognition. So in the traditional ASR architectures, let's say using a Gaussian mixture model, there is a clear boundary for phonemes. Like we can basically find out where one phone ends or one word ends and the other word begins. If you think of attention as a function of alignment, and if we compare the attention function to the boundaries that the GMM-HMM model, the alignment that it gives, you can see that they are drastically different than each other. And one complaint that we have been seeing for the attention mechanisms are these attention weights tend to be very peaky in the sense that they only concentrate on a small subset of feature vectors, whereas the GMM-HMM model or the traditional ASR model is able to look at the full window of features for making the prediction. So in this work, what we did was we identified that there is a misalignment. So there could be a misalignment of attention. So it doesn't mean in the traditional in the normal way of training an attention-based encoder decoder model, there could be misalignment of attention, but people usually don't train for learning the correct alignment model, right? We're always optimizing for CTC or the attention task. We usually don't optimize directly for learning the correct alignment. That's what we mean. That's what I meant. So misalignment of attention with the ground truth is not penalized, right? So the focus is always on optimizing CTC or the attention cost functions. So in this work, what we did was we focused on minimizing the alignment error as well. So along with minimizing the CTC cost function and the attention cost function, we also minimize the alignment error. And when we introduced this extra task of alignment, there was a CTC task, there was the attention task. Each of them had a lambda, the multitask learning parameter. When we introduced this extra alignment task, what should we give the weightage? How much weightage should we give to this alignment task? Like that was unclear. So the normal way of solving this problem is basically running a grid search on all the lambda parameters and then picking the one which gives the best result. But that's good enough for, let's say, 3 tasks. Let's say tomorrow we want to try another task on top of CTC, attention, and alignment. Then we have to go through the same process of running the grid search. So we were looking for some methods to automatically learn these weights, and we use one of the famous papers for implementing this, and we show that it's able to give better performance and also faster convergence compared to the baseline model. So one motivation you would say for this work is recently there was this one paper emitting word timings with the end-to-end models. So this is by Google. So basically what they are trying to solve is in all these end-to-end ASR models, it's also beneficial to have accurate word timings. So let's say this could be to generate subtitles, the SRT files for an audio or a video file. It's important that we also have accurate word timings. Yeah, we are always concerned with getting the hypothesis or the recognized words correctly from the model, but we are also concerned with getting the words timings correctly. So how they solve this problem is the ground truth is again from a GMM-HMM model, similar to what we do. So what they do is they define an error between the start frame and the end frame. and then they use that to constrain the attention mechanism to not give attention to different or other parts of the uh, input feature vector sequence. So this is that you would say one motivation to also optimize for alignment to generate accurate word timings. But we also show that by doing that, we will be able to get a better performance and faster convergence from the same model. So there have been some previous work on utilizing alignments for a machine learning task. So let's say the most famous recent paper would be this consciousness prior paper by Yoshi Bingio. So here they talk about using these abstract priors in an encoder attention decoder model. So these abstract priors is something that we already know what the model should do, and how do we impose this abstract prior on this machine learning model so that it's able to learn better representations. Similarly, for doing text-to-speech and machine translation, there have been works on utilizing previous alignments. I would say the closest work to ours is this jointly learning to align and translate with transformer models, where they use this IBM model of alignment, the traditional model of alignment for the machine learning for the machine translation task, and then use those labels as the targets for learning the attention weights. Uh, even within the ASR literature itself, this work by Chorosky and others, these attention-based models for speech recognition. In that work, they measure the misalignment between the ground truth and the attention weights, but they don't penalize the model for giving, let's say, wrong attention or attention which is not closer to the ground truth. So as I said, when we introduce this extra loss function, it is also important that we tune the multitask learning weights, like how much weightage we should give for each of these tasks, right? So when we looked at the previous works on loss scaling, like how much scaling or how much weightage we should give to these tasks, we were looking for some literature on this. So what we saw was most works. They do use a weighted sum of losses, but typically these laws are either these weights are either uniform or hand tuned. So when I say uniform, what I mean is if there are two tasks, you would just give 0.5, 0.5 or half weights to each of these tasks, or they're hand tuned. So you would run an hyperparameter optimization task on top of the multitask learning weights to tune these weights. Then we came across this paper, Uncertainty to Weight Losses for Scene Geometry and others, by Kendall and others. So basically, they introduced this principled way of combining multiple loss functions, and how they do it is they use this homoscedastic uncertainty or the task uncertainty to effectively learn the weights automatically from the model itself. And that's what we use to learn the weights for CTC, attention, and alignment tasks. So what we are concerned is within the joint CTC and attention architecture, this is what we just saw. So within this, we are mostly concerned with this part of the architecture now. That is learning the correct attention model. So the attention model should be able to give attention to those parts of the input features or input representations, and those parts should be the most relevant. And this ground truth we generate from a high frame rate model, which is a GMM HMM model. So we redefine our overall cost function like this. So along with the CTC and attention cost functions, we also introduce this alignment as an extra task. So this L align or the alignment loss is defined between the model's attention. So the model has an attention mechanism within the end-to-end ASR model. And then this loss function is defined between the model's attention and the alignment from a GMM HMM model. So we also have a previously trained GMM HMM model. Using the GMM HMM model, we can generate the alignments. So, and we make the attention mechanism give attention similar to what a GMM HMM model is giving. So yeah, this is what it looks like. So given a speech utterance, we have the transcript for that speech utterance. So the lexicon gives the grapheme to phoneme or the pronunciation for those words, all the words in that utterance. And using the previously trained GMM-HMM model, the acoustic model, what we can do is we can do a frame level alignment. The frame level alignment basically says for these frames, this is the phone that is being recognized for that frame. So we call these alpha stars. Um, so this is our desired attention weight. So we want our attention mechanism kind of mimicking what the GMM-HMM model is giving. So we want to train our attention mechanism to best approximate GMM-HMM model. So these frame level alignments kind of looks like this. There is a start frame. There is a let's say if we take the median of that window, we get a center frame, and we get the end frame. We might not want the attention mechanism to give similar looking attention weights, but we want to best approximate what the GMM-HMM model is giving. So this brings to the modification of the joint CTC attention architecture, where we introduce this additional task of doing alignment. And alphas were the attention weights that the decoder was giving to the input representations. We take these alphas and then define this alignment task, which compares the alpha from the attention model and the alpha star from the GMM-HMM model. And then this loss, the alignment loss, is defined between them. And we want to optimize all three of them together. So before we even start optimizing these loss functions, we don't even know what the attention should look like, right? So in the GMM-HMM model, it basically gives the start frame and the end frame for that phone window. But how is the information distributed within the phone window? Like, or let's say, even if we go implement this for word level or graphing level, how is the acoustic information distributed within that window for that phoneme? So we didn't know how that information is distributed. So we experimented with different alignment functions, what we define as alignment functions. So one of them could be, let's say, what we are calling as the square alignment, which basically says give the same attention weight for every frame within that window. That's what we are calling as a square. And then we also define a Gaussian kind of distribution within this window. And the mean is the median this frame for that window. And then we can adjust the standard deviation of this distribution to adjust how we think the distribution should look like. And at the end, what we are calling as the impulse, it basically says give the maximum attention to only the center frame of the window, and don't give much attention to the other parts of the entire utterance. So we do some experiments with these three alignment functions, what we are calling as the alignment functions. And we also do some experiments with different loss functions. So now that we have defined the alignment function and we have the ground truth from the GMM-HMM model, we want to be able to compute a loss between these two, right? And what should this loss function be? So we experiment with K divergence and then optimal transport distance. For the optimal transport distance, we use this sinkhorn divergence, and we use the implementation by Fady and others. And we also use a simple cosine similarity function between alpha and alpha star to learn the desired attention weights. So one of the points that I mentioned was what should be the weights of these loss functions. So we rewrite the overall cost function by referring to Kendall and others, this paper. So this is what our overall loss function looks like. The sigma 1, sigma 2, and sigma 3 are automatically learned from the model itself. So we don't hand tune the sigmas. So we don't say give this much importance to CTC, this much importance to attention and alignment. We let the model itself learn sigmas through the backpropagation process. And we show that by doing this, we can actually achieve better performance than if we did some hand tuning on this. So again, we did some architectural study on the smaller timid data set. And these are the parameters that we consider. So we considered three different alignment loss functions, three different alignment types, the square, impulse, and Gaussian. And this is for our encoder and for decoder. So we just use one layer of decoder. So I'll just show some results from this study. This is for the when we use scale divergence as the cost function, and let's say if we don't scale the cost, right, we set it to a constant value, and if we let it automatically scale using our redefined cost function for different alignment types. So we did this study for optimal transport distance and cosine similarity as well. And what we saw that even for using a simple loss function as cosine similarity, the model is able to perform like at least comparably, if not better than the baseline. Like in many cases, it's actually better than the baseline. So because this one is very simple and very easy to implement, and also it's able to compute the loss function much faster, and in on an average it performs better than the baseline compared to let's say optimal transport distance and the KL divergence based metrics. We use this to study on a larger data set, that is the Libre speech data set. So here what I'm showing is, let's say if I take the cosine similarity as the loss function, I take the Libre speech data set, I do the alignment with the using a Gaussian mixture model, and then I train the model using the proposed alignment loss. What does the attention profile looks like? So here, this is the attention profile for a model which is trained without the alignment loss. So this is our baseline model, and x-axis is my input feature vector sequence. Y is my decoder index. Attention looks like this, right? So as we said previously, there is a when people complain that attention weights tend to be peaky. They don't distribute equally or distribute over the entire window. So yeah, it can be seen in this attention profile that they are not very strong, right? Uh, I think it becomes more clear when we plot it against the alignments from a GMM-HMM model. So GMM-HMM alignment looks like this, where each of the windows are clearly defined. And ideally, this is what we would want to achieve from an end-to-end model. And when we implement our proposed method of using the alignment loss, it is very close to what a GMM-HMM based alignment looks like. So I just go back and forth between the GMM-HMM model and what the proposed mechanism is able to predict. So as you can see, it's very close to the alignments from a GMM-HMM model. So what this means is the model is able to learn very accurate alignment model, which can be used to generate accurate word timestamps for using an end-to-end model. So then what we do is we plot the attention weights over the epochs. So this is when we just start training the network. So let's say this is right after the first epoch of training. So I just take both the models, one without the alignment loss and one with the alignment loss, just after the first epoch, and then I take a frame of speech, pass it to both the models, and look at what the attention looks like. So what we found out is this is for the one without the alignment loss, the attention are not converged yet, right? So it takes a few epochs to start for the attention weight or the attention model to start giving the correct attention to the right parts of the input. Whereas if we train this with the proposed alignment loss, what we see is even within the first epoch. So I'm just plotting this after the first epoch, but we saw that even like within the first couple of iterations of the network, it starts to learn giving attention to the right parts of the input. So I think maybe it means that alignment as a function for the end-to-end model may be much easier than doing ASR for the speech recognition. So we also plot this for let's say after doing the training for 14 epochs. What we see is even after 14 epochs, the one without the alignment loss, even though it has converged to giving the attention to the correct regions, we can see that these attention weights are not distributed over the region, right? So if you take this example, it's not completely distributed over this region. Whereas the one where we train with the alignment loss, we can see that these attention weights are like very clearly distributed over the entire input window. So these are the plots for accuracy and the loss function for both the one with the alignment loss and one without the alignment loss. So the model which is trained with the alignment loss kind of converges smoother uh, to the optimum when compared to the one without the alignment loss. So this is, I'm just plotting the alignment loss itself, the value of the alignment loss for both the one with and without. So I mean, I think this is just to make it clear that the one which is trained with the alignment loss actually reduces the loss of alignment between the model's attention weights and the ground truth, the GMM-HMM ground truth. So this is the result on the LibriSpeech dataset. So here I'm just showing that for the cosine similarity loss function and the constant and the automatic scaling uh, of the loss, we see that for the automatic scaling of loss using the redefined cost function, it actually gives the best phoneme error rate. It also converges at 14 epochs when compared to the 20 epochs. So these are the two main multitask learning architectures that we studied. So what I would say in conclusion, with regards to these two architectures is specifically for the multitask or the multi-target learning architecture, what we demonstrated was we can actually use this joint CTC attention, the encoder decoder, to predict multiple targets. And these multiple targets we consider were phonemes and graphemes. We used a shared encoder. We also show that such a system can perform comparably to the models trained separately, like, one for phoneme and one for grapheme. And we also show that by bringing the phoneme decoder to the first layer, it gives the best performance. So we are considering different works for future studies. So one of them is using different attention mechanisms for different targets. Say, for example, for doing phoneme recognition, a set of attention mechanisms can be more performing than others. And we can also set these lambdas or the multitask learning weights differently for different tasks. We can also consider more targets, right? We just consider phonemes and graphemes. We can also go with phonemes, graphemes, word pieces, and word level within the same end-to-end model. So that's something that I personally haven't seen in literature so far, and that's something that we want to try. For the other problem where we considered alignment as a task within the multitask learning architecture, so we mainly focused on reducing the misalignment between the attention loss function and the GMM-HMM model. So what we show was by introducing this alignment loss, it is able to learn better alignments and also converge faster compared to the baseline. And we also went ahead and showed that if we modify the loss function such that the weights of the overall cost function is automatically learned, it's able to again perform better than the baseline. So I'll briefly talk about some other multitask learning architectures that are there in literature right now. So one of the things that we have studied within the speech lab is this multilingual end-to-end ASR, where this encoder is again shared, and we are concerned about modeling this for two different languages. So this work was done with Anuj, who was a MTech student working with Ramsar for his MTech thesis. So where we studied the multilingual ASR for English and Tamil. So again, in this architecture, there was only one decoder, but the label set of the decoder was basically concatenation or combination of both English letters, the alphabets of English, and the alphabets of Tamil. So we showed some good results on this English Tamil dataset, where we show that the model is actually able to also learn code mixed speech recognition. So if we combine both the utterances together, both the languages together in the same utterance, the model is able to switch between English to Tamil consistently for this code mixed speech. On the other extreme end of of this multilingual end-to-end ASR, recently Facebook AI Research published this one paper, massively multilingual ASR, 50 languages, one model, 1 billion parameters. So basically, what they did is, so using the similar multi-target architecture that we have, so the encoder is shared between 50 decoders, maybe not 50 decoders, around 20 decoders, where one decoder is clubbing together similar languages. So say, for example, Indo-Dravidian languages, you can combine them into a single decoder, and that decoder is able to model that set of languages. So what they showed is they actually trained this shared encoder and multiple decoder model for 50 languages. So these are the scales of multilingual end-to-end ASR, and again, these come under multitask learning for end-to-end ASR. So again, there was this one paper in Interspeech 2020, which concluded like a couple of months ago, where these authors introduced this concept of all-in-one transformer. So which basically does different tasks. So one of them is the ASR task. So for example, on the Wall Street Journal corpus, they trained the model for doing ASR. So they also use the DCase challenge data. So these are for acoustic scene classification, right? So given some acoustic context, what does the acoustics say, like whether it's like cat or speech, some vehicle noise, these kind of different tasks. So they show that using this all-in-one transformer, this one transformer is able to do all these different tasks: ASR, acoustic scene classification, and other tasks. So we are now starting to see actually the multitask learning paradigm kind of take off in the end-to-end ASR domain. But there are many challenges that are still open for the task for the problem of multitask learning. I'm just briefly introducing few of them here. So one is the task selection. So what I mean is, which task should you club together so that your overall performance of the model increases, right? Because there will be tasks which are contradictory to each other, and if we club them together, the overall performance might come down. So in this paper, they study which tasks should be learned together in multitask learning. They take the example of this is again in the domain of computer vision, where they take semantic segmentation, depth estimation, and then key point detection and other tasks, edge detection and other tasks, and then they study which of them should be clubbed together for the multitask learning problem. So again, the main reason that someone might want to do this is because there is a strict compute budget during inference time. We will not be able to ship different models for doing these different tasks in isolation, right? We don't want to ship one model to do image segmentation. We don't want to ship one model to do different tasks. We would ideally want to share these tasks using a single backbone. And how should we select these tasks together is, I think, still an open problem, and people are working on this. And this is one example of the papers that I could find. So another problem is we do early stopping. So what I mean by early stopping is, as soon as the model performance doesn't improve or it starts degrading after some epochs, we stop the training. But when we have these different tasks, right? Let's say phoneme recognition, grapheme recognition, and alignment loss, when should we stop the training? Because some of the tasks will be able to converge faster than others. And if we continue the training of all of them at the same time, one of them might overfit. Again, this problem, I think, is still an open problem for multitask learning. The other problem that I could find was this loss function considerations. So this is an invited talk by Andre Karpathy in ICML 2019, multitask learning in the wilderness. I highly suggest watching this specific talk. It's highly informative. So what they talk about in this is, for the loss function itself, there are many considerations that we have to do. So one of them is the different scales of the loss function. Let's say, for example, for classification and regression, that's the example that they are taking. But we saw that for CTC and attention, what are the different scales that we have to give? And again, some tasks are more important than others. So how do we decide which task gets what scale? And some tasks are much easier than others. So what we saw was alignment as a task is easier than CPC and attention because it's able to learn the model within the first epoch itself. And some tasks have more data than others. Um, yeah, so the ASR problem right now, they're trying with thousands of hours of data, but say, for example, acoustic scene classification, they might not have that many hours of data to train the models. And yeah, different tasks may come with different noise within the data set itself. So coming to some conclusions and future work that we want to pursue in the speech lab for end-to-end ASR and specifically to multitask learning within the end-to-end ASR. So we saw that phoneme recognition model can be brought to different layers, and we show that the phonemes and graphemes can be modeled together. So we want to take this further and then combine multiple targets within the same model. Say, for example, automatically derived subword units are a set of targets that we might want to implement like closer to the input. And on top of that, we can bring in the phoneme recognition, grapheme recognition, some kind of subword decoder, and also some kind of word level decoder within the same model. This is something that we want to pursue. So yeah, so I personally want to start like looking at these massively multitasking end-to-end ASR architectures where we implement ASR for different targets, maybe also combine the alignment laws for each of them. So we can generate the alignments by using high frame rate GMM HMM model. So we can maybe use those within, again, like combine it with the multi-target learning model. So we can also combine uh, uh, different tasks like acoustic scene classification, multilingual end-to-end ASR, and within the multilingual end-to-end ASR, can we do code mix speech recognition using multitask learning architectures where the model is also able to predict where we switch from one language to another language? Can we have such kind of multitask learning architectures? Um, and yeah, there are many works in combining speech enhancement, spoken language understanding, speech translation in TTS on top of the ASR architecture. That those are some of the works that we know in literature that are ongoing. And yeah, so can we combine some kind of triplet loss for the context vectors, because context vectors are defined for um, a set of tokens, right? So can we make similar context vectors come together in that higher dimensional space and then push the other ones apart? We might have to implement some kind of hard negative mining for these kind of massively multilingual end-to-end ASR architectures. That's something that I haven't seen in literature, but, and something that I personally want to pursue for this. So concluding this, what I would say is end-to-end ASR can be used in the multitask learning setting to model multiple targets. So I just gave an introduction to phoneme grapheme model and showed one example of Facebook AI research where they are doing 50 languages within the same end-to-end ASR model. So a multi-target model can perform comparably to a single target model. It can also perform better if we choose where we are implementing these targets. We also saw an example of alignment as a task, and a simple cosine similarity function is able to give good results. Um, yes, and we also saw automatically learning the scaling of different losses is also giving better results. There could be many more other wins for multitask learning that need to be realized for end-to-end ASR, which we are not seeing so far. But yeah, I think this will take off, and then we will see similar to the uh, self-driving architectures where there are massively multitasking networks. We might start seeing these for ASR as well. So yeah, for implementing all these models, we use ESP.NET and Kaldi. Yeah, huge thanks to the developer community, the open source community behind these two toolkits, without whom I think none of the work would have been possible. And also, I personally, we want to thank Minro for uh, for all the support that we have received for all these works. Um, yeah, thanks for coming to the Samvad talk.
Thank you, Srikanda. The talk has been excellent. Thank you very much. So I think, yeah, we can take questions now, maybe one or two questions.
So I have a question, Shrikanta. So when you talked about the multitask learning tasks which are easier and which are probably complementary and which are contradicting,
Yes.
within ASR you listed a whole lot of tasks which could be multitasked. Would you have some idea about which of them are most complementary
So
in terms of helping each other, and which of them could be not helping each other when they go together? Any thoughts on that?
So I would say specifically for the ASR and alignment task, I think they would definitely help each other from the studies that we have seen, like specifically for, let's say, if we combine the CTC and attention loss function with an alignment task, I think that will give better performance, because alignment task will help the attention model in learning better representations. Um, but I'm not sure about the other tasks, let's say acoustic seat classification or speech enhancement and spoken language understanding. That's something that I personally haven't worked on. But yeah, I would like to look into those as well. I'm guessing by bringing in some kind of triplet loss for the context vector and doing some hard negative mining for those examples. It will be complementary. I mean, it will also help the alignment loss as well, because then we will be looking at like complete negative examples between within a mini batch. So I think the convergence will be faster when we implement those kind of architectures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Shrikanta, can I ask you a question on implementation?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so do you use GPUs for implementing these, or these
Yes,
are done on distributed systems? Or?
No. These are all GPU based. So we use the 2080 Ti machine that we have in the Mindro lab for implementing all of them. They're all implemented using PyTorch, using a multi GPU single node multi GPU distributed training. Yes.
Okay. So the libraries that you use are also using the same kind of implementation, or you had to change to a GPU based implementation? The one that you did the last but one slide.
Yeah, so ESPNet comes with distributed training support already inbuilt.
Okay.
So we didn't have to modify much, but we had to make sure the drivers are implemented correctly, and then we test the communication between both the GPUs. So it uses NV, I think NCML or some library for multi GPU communication. So we use that. So ESPNet uses that in the backend to make sure that the training is distributed on both the GPUs.
Okay.
But there is also support for multi-node, multi-GPU training. So if we want to use a cluster of machines to distribute this training on many machines and many GPUs, but that's something that we haven't looked into so far.
Explore. Okay. Thank you, Shrikanta. I think we have also finished more than 1.5 hours. So if there are no more questions, I guess we can close the talk. And yeah, feel free to write to Shrikanta and Professor Ram for further questions.
Yeah, I'd like to
Thank
thank Professor Ram for giving me the opportunity to talk in the Samvad. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome, Shrikanta. It was very good.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And, yeah.
Thank you very much.